Good afternoon. This is Arlo Johnson speaking to you from Vernon, British Columbia. 1 p.m. on June the 13th. Looks like we're going to have a little thunderstorm this afternoon, which won't hurt. Yesterday was 92 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty warm. Today's cooler. What I wanted to talk about a little bit today is the difference I've always noticed between Canada and the United States. Now, I know that the United States produces a sort of attitude that they are the greatest and whatever, and that they are very proud to be an American. And to a certain extent, I guess that's all right. But to taking it to a pride angle deal, it's not good. according to God, pride goes before a fall, and which is, and I think it's true. People have seen that over and over. Canadians, as general people, are more subdued and maybe a little more than they should be. The thing that gets me about, I'll think, just like, for instance, one of my beefs is the Coast Guard. I think Canada has the largest area of shoreline in the world. And we don't have a very big Coast Guard. The United States has two coasts, the East Coast, West Coast. Canada has three. And I did look up one time the difference between the Canadian Coast Guard and the American Coast Guard. American Coast Guard, I saw American Coast Guard in Caracas, Venezuela, in the dock down on the shore. Caracas is 9 miles in, and I thought, now what in the world is that doing here? I know that they're in the Caribbean, around in there, and I know that north of Vancouver Island, there's most likely no Canadian Coast Guard, and they rely on the American Coast Guard. If there's one thing happened, this ship of immigrants or illegal immigrants coming from, I think it was Korea, and the ship had all these people on it, and the Americans had to call the Canadian government and tell them when it was approaching the British Columbia coast. It was north of Vancouver Island. No, I thought, how can that be? Then the other thing I noticed was the Americans had long guns aboard, handguns, and a 50 millimeter machine gun right on the front of the boat. No fooling around. The Canadians, when I looked at it, had nothing. Nothing. And I thought to myself, what are you supposed to do? Throw rice at them if you wanted to stop or something? And this business of being so subdued and whatever else is great in some cases, but in other cases where you have people who are supposed to defend a country, I think you don't do it that way. You have to have the power to carry out your demands for people to stop or whatever when they're invading your territory. The other thing is the Canadian Army. Now, I don't know about the Navy and the Air Force that much, but the Canadian Army always seemed to me like Salvation Army used clothing demonstration. They look so dumpy and, not a sharp looking thing. The American Army beside them is so different that it's just amazing. I don't know, I can't understand that. They have sharp looking uniforms, really sharp. When they're on parade, they look great. And infantrymen and whatever difference. And I know that what they call the DEW line up north, where there's, operations by the Americans and the Canadians. The Canadian camp was like I don't know, a homeless camp, and the American camp was a sharp, they had all kinds of stuff. They had boats, they had this, they had that, pleasure boats and whatever, and fishing and whatever. The Canadians didn't have any of that. And, that's got to be demoralizing to people. But why is that like that? Now, here's the other thing. They of course, promote heroes. The Americans promote heroes. If they get a person who jumped the river or did something, they blow them up to no end, make movies about them and everything. Sylvester Stallone made great movies about Rambo. And, hit movies, big box office movies. I mean, he became a big star with those movies. Now I'm going to read you something that I didn't know until today, and why I didn't know it, I had absolutely no idea as a Canadian. Here's a write-up on a guy by the name of Leo Major. He was in the Canadian Army. I'm just going to read you this blurb about him, the original Rambo. I'll have to use glasses. Leo Major, known as the real-life Rambo, served in the Canadian Army during World War II. He demonstrated tremendous bravery throughout the war, capturing a German armored vehicle with secret codes and single-handedly apprehending 93 German soldiers in the Netherlands. Despite losing an eye to a phosphorus grenade and being injured by a landmine, Major recovered and returned to duty. One incident in the Dutch town of Zwolle showcased Major's extraordinary heroism. While he was on a scouting mission with his friend Willie Arsenal, their position was compromised, leading to Arsenal's death. In response, Major fought back, killing 2 enemy troops and seizing Arsenal's weapons. Fueled by anger, Major embarked on a one-person rampage, entering Zwolle alone to free the town from German troops. Major drove a hijacked German vehicle into town and engaged the enemy, creating the impression of a much larger attacking force. He captured around 100 enemy troops, set fire to the Gestapo headquarters, and forced the Germans to retreat. The Dutch resistance took control of the town hall, and the next day the Allies entered Zwolle without encountering resistance. Major's actions saved civilian lives. After the war, Major served in the Korean War before returning to Canada. He lived a quiet life until his death in 2008, leaving behind a legacy of remarkable bravery and selflessness. That's the end of that. Now that's a pretty amazing story. And obviously, I would pretty well guess that it's true. And nobody promoted that or let the Canadian public know about it. Now, is there something wrong with Canadians? Do they have to copy the Americans with everything or with nothing? Or if they do copy the Canadian Americans, oh no, we can't do that. It's not Canadian made then. I don't know what it is. It seems like the only things I see is they try to do things that are, you know, really weird and ugly so that they're different from the Americans. Like, the weird stuff. Anyway, I'm disappointed that the media in Canada is so lax on something like that. There's a guy who was a real hero, a real Rambo, and I'm going to say I challenge somebody to come up with a deal and make a movie about a real Canadian hero. It would most likely go over well. And mind you, maybe it's not in our makeup to blow our own horn, but I think in a case like that, where that is so outstanding, that it would be something that Canadian young men and women could be proud of to hear that about one of their own soldiers. Yeah, with that, I'm going to say fine and dandy. So much for that today. We'll see what happens. And if you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great. Anyway, until later, God bless and goodbye. Oh, man. What's the matter with you? You